Good evening and welcome to the Student Achievement Committee, the Equity and Student Achievement Committee of the Whole. Today is Tuesday, May 14th. We're going to go ahead and open the meeting at this time. Currently, we do not show any speakers online, and I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the April 16th meeting, Equity and Student meeting.
Second.
Motion by Vice President LeBron, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. All in favor? Aye. Wonderful. Before we continue, I do want to recognize that we have a couple of individuals online, one of them being our parent representative, Monica Graham. We also have our Chief of Communications, Marisol Ramos Lopez, online as well, joining us this evening. We're going to jump right into our topics, and our first topic of discussion will be brought to us by Dr. Demario Strickland, and I want to just, before we officially call him up, I want to just again acknowledge and celebrate that Dr. Strickland earned his doctorate in education this past weekend. I was able to join him online and celebrate with him, and that's what this is about. So, Dr. Strickland, at this time, I'd love for you to present our quarterly academic plan update.
Thank you so much, Chairwoman Simmons. Good evening, President Elliott, Vice President LeBron, staff and colleagues, and fellow commissioners in the greater Rochester community. I am Dr. Demario Strickland, and I am the proud Deputy Superintendent of Teaching and Learning for the Rochester City School District. Today, I'm going to be presenting on our academic plan updates for quarter number 3. Okay, next slide, slide 2. So first and foremost, in everything we do, we have to ensure that we are aligned with our Board of Education goals that we have established from 2023 to 2028. The red marker indicates that all of these are in relation to our academic plan. So I have took the liberty to change this presentation up a little bit. We are going to be talking about the domains by the numbers as we have done before. We're going to review the reporting process. We're going to review the reporting questions. We're also reviewing the reporting by domain for actually quarters 1, 2, and 3, looking at the trends, which I've provided in graphs. And something additional that I've placed is looking at the example indicators, some indicators within each of the table recommendations so that you all and the public gets a little extra view of what it is that we are actually responding to in our academic plan. Finally, we will talk about the next steps for the academic and financial plan as we move forward. Next slide. Our academic plan was built on the foundation of WestEd's turnaround leadership principles, which is around turnaround leadership, in which there are 10 academic plan indicators, 7 in talent management, 34 in instructional transformation, 3 in culture shift, 13 in systems, resources, and structure for a total of 67 recommendations. Next slide. Back to slide 5, please. So our reporting process is as follows. Generally, we have individuals that serve as the lead for each of the recommendations, and there are 2 questions that we as a cabinet, as a staff answer, which I will review in the next slide. We have meetings to review the plans that occur between the state monitor, the superintendent, the deputies, and the chief of staff. We ensure that there's alignment of evidence with each of the indicators. Adjustments are made after conversations with our state monitor and conversations with us all. And we either add information or omit information, and he will also give us the nod if we are okay with satisfying that recommendation. We then submit the final report to the state monitor. We provide it to the Board of Education and the superintendent's board log. We add a final document that we send to Commissioner Betty Rosa, and we now are at this part, which is the presentation to the Board of Education and the public. And then in a few weeks, we will have a meeting with the State Education Department officials where we talk about the academic plan in quarter number 3. Next slide. Here are the 2 reporting questions that we answer. We have to make sure that we are looking at the amount of evidence that we have as it pertains to the specific indicators. Has the district made appropriate progress during quarter 3? We answer yes or no. The district is making adequate progress towards meeting the recommendation. That's what question number 1 is asking. And then number 2 is, has the district fully implemented actions required during this quarter, yes or no? This means the district has not taken action or will not be able to take action on the recommendation at the moment. There are some recommendations in nature that are throughout the school year, so there's no way that we can actually say yes to that actual recommendation. So in some cases, they are no, but that does not mean we are not making adequate progress towards those indicators. Next slide. So first, you can see in turnaround leadership for this quarter 3, for question number 1, we have a total of 10 yeses, 0 nos. And for question number 2, has the district fully implemented actions required during this quarter? We have 5 yeses and 5 nos. On the side, I have highlights of areas with appropriate progress. We have made progress with our board goals, which I showed in the beginning with slide number 2. Our professional learning plans are still intact. Receivership schools do have bounded autonomy. Facilities modernization plans actually just was accepted recently, and the board has adopted a governance model from the Council of Great City Schools. Areas that are not fully implemented because they are ongoing would be the superintendent's evaluation, followed by the central office cabinet members. So here's an indicator that was extracted from the academic plan. As you can see, it has in the first column the actual table. The next would be the domain, so it's turnaround leadership. The number, the recommendation number, which was number 12, and as you can see, the 23, 24 owner, that was members of my division, which are our school chiefs in this case. And I will take a deep dive in this recommendation, but one of the recommendations that was put forth was effective immediately, create a work calendar that affords school chiefs a minimum of 3 uninterrupted days per week, providing direct services to assigned schools. As you can see, this recommendation has made adequate progress for the first quarter. And secondly, we have implemented those actions during this quarter. And then we provide a folder for some of the indicators in which actual artifacts go within. And there's a small recommendation, which you could see here, which is, small evidence or information provided that supports the evidence that's within the folder that says school chiefs continue to work virtually and face-to-face with principals at least 3 days a week. Now, the impact that has on our school leadership is that we are, face-to-face with our school leaders. We are providing them recommendations as to where they can move practice within their schools, but also take the time and just have that face time to even do things like praise them for their efforts and continuously see positive growth. Next slide. For the area of talent management, you could see question 1 has 7 yeses and 0 nos, and has the district fully implemented actions required during this quarter number 3? we have 3 yeses and 4 nos. The charts on the side, as you can see, it starts from quarter 1, going towards quarter 3 at the top, and we have steady made progress in those areas. And similarly, but you could see in question number 2, there was one that slightly got off track, and at times that does happen. If there could be a meeting that may have supposedly have happened during the time, or something is not correctly put in place, but those are the exact things that we are looking to rectify so that we can continue to move forward in a positive direction. The highlighted areas with appropriate progress, we are doing much work to clean up, to develop our standard operating procedures. We are trying to make departments not people dependent, but they're running on policies and procedures that live beyond the person, so that we start to develop some institutional knowledge that's within specific divisions. We have made a lot of progress with TNTP, with our central office evaluation tool. Annual professional performance reviews happen, as well as school chiefs, the chief academic officer, the chief of special education, the senior director for staff and educator effectiveness. We actually look at redacted teacher evaluations and determine areas of strength for our administrators and determine areas of difficulty. The zones to support school chiefs are now being looked at in terms of looking at every aspect of the organization and figuring out who in those departments can actually align to specific chiefs so that they have the support that they need right under their hands, or they have an individual that can help support them in specific environments. Next slide. This one is a little small, but I still wanted to capture the spirit of the recommendation. So this is, again, what I was describing earlier about our redacted evaluations process, in which we're looking at completion rates. We get a weekly report from Dr. Miller in the Office of Human Capital to determine where are our administrators in terms of their evaluation process. We look at evaluation data trends, how many teachers are effective, how many are developing, where are our efforts needed to improve the academic outcomes or professional support for our teachers so that they can help improve the academic outcomes for our students. We align those with the professional learning plan. So for instance, meeting with the school chiefs and the chief academic officer, the chief of SPED, so on and so forth, we sat down and looked and saw that some of the feedback was not actionable to our teachers as a result of closing out those evaluations. So we were able to pivot our next professional learning for our principals to really focus on looking at bite-sized feedback from observations and practicing what that actually looks like when talking with teachers. You could see, has the district made appropriate progress during this quarter? Yes. Has the district fully implemented actions required during this quarter? That is a no, because it, again, is something that is ongoing, something that we have to continue to address as the school year prolongs. And then finally, we have that district evidence. Again, another folder, a description that's provided so that the evidence is understood, the evidence that is in the folder is understood in a small, brief narrative. Next slide. The instructional transformation is the most meaty of the indicators, in which there are a total of 34. So as of now, we have 31 yeses for question number 1 and 3 nos. And then our question number 2 is a total of 25 yeses and 9 nos. So areas, because there's so many, just wanted to pull out a few quick appropriate progress. You know, the extended school year planning has begun. Yes, these are things that I've presented before, but because they're put in the plan as they are, they're now kind of maintenance, even though it's a part of our daily practice. Our grading and promotion policy is in effect. elementary grading expectations has been, it's in effect, and we're constantly reforming those so that it shows a level of continuity across the organization. We do know that we do have a lot of work to do, but one of the things that we needed to do is making sure that our families are in position to understand where their students are academically. Data-wise is going extremely well. Schools throughout the district, schools and programs are focusing on the school improvement plans for next school year. And they are, in a collaborative process with central office individuals, collecting data and helping school leaders to inform the school improvement plan, to give an outside lens, because sometimes when we're checking our own information, we tend to have blinders on. So we've enhanced that process this year to really say, no, you may want to consider this, and we had outside sources be able to go in and do this process. The supports, and we all know the city of Rochester has done a fantastic job just welcoming our newly arrived families. It's happening with all of us, BWL, our placement office. They're just really trying to do any and everything to make sure that those families are successful in our city. The instructional toolkit for teaching and learning, that's actually our academic warehouse. That's where we house all of our lesson plans, our daily plans for teachers. That's where you can find scope and sequences. And when you nail it down, we have the core instructional actions, which were developed by our discipline directors and their teams, i.e. math, science, social studies, ELA, and they've pinned down what are the high leverage strategies that can be employed in our classrooms to give our kids the largest lift. And we have core student practices that's identifying what students should be doing when we go into a classroom to see if they are making progress towards those lifts. So we have nailed all of that out, made it very seamless for our school leaders, for them to share with their staffs, and it truly is starting to become a part of the fabric of this organization. We're consistently monitoring problem-solving teams. Bi-weekly basis, I meet with the director of MTSS. She gives me a list of schools that she's attended with her team, what they're noticing in problem-solving meetings, how are we going to make those more effective, and we're focused only on 2 domains, which is building leadership capacity and the leadership development that's happening within the actual team. The instructional strategies, as I mentioned before, that all can be found in the instructional toolkit. Somewhere we're not making as adequate progress is the removal of outdated materials. A lot of that has legal implications. Can't just throw out textbooks. You have to make sure that you are discarding them appropriately. But one of the things we are very hopeful for is that with the reconfiguration, the schools can actually find other ways to get rid of items that are no longer needed. The corrective action plan for Commissioners Regulation Part 154, that's our CAP that's connected generally to the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages, but there's implications throughout the organization that impact that bilingual CAP. I'm not even going to call it a bilingual CAP. It's a CAP. It's a Part 154 corrective action plan. But we have to continue to report on that action plan throughout the quarter, throughout the year. And finally, we looked, and there's administrative training on PowerSchool that does need to take place after reviewing what was shown in the academic plan that was quickly realized, and what the cabinet level team will do is actually find one of our next principal meetings to make sure that training takes place so that we satisfy that indicator in the academic plan. Next slide. And again, here's an example, and this is one of our maintenance policies. You all have passed as a board the grading, retention, and promotion policy, but again, we have to spend each quarter still updating it with the same information saying we did it. Thank you. Next slide. Culture Shift has stayed 3 yeses on both sides for the entire year. Our school of choice is digital. Meetings are being attended by the superintendent or the designee and administration with parents. And we do have our executive school-based planning team, which meets monthly, and that's when we get all the unions together to make sure that we are satisfying the elements of the contracts and making sure that school-based planning teams are running effectively in our schools. Next slide. And again, lots of text, but as you can see, this is assigned to Chief Ramos Lopez, and it really just breaks down exactly what it is that is being asked of us to report. You see that both have been satisfied for this quarter, and the RCSD, we also have done great or made great strides in making sure that our website and materials are accessible to the various language of the students that are within, students and families within the RCSD. And then finally, we have systems, resources, and structures. We have 13 yeses and 0 nos for this quarter, and we have 8 yeses and 5 nos for question number 2. You see our charts again on the side. We've made progress in the top area. The bottom area has been stagnant, but again, don't let that scare you. It's something that we have to do ongoing to report, and we won't be able to satisfy it until the end of the year. You can see the highlights with appropriate progress, timely process for conducting annual reviews. I know that Chief Swan is intricately looking at that with her team all the time, working with the chiefs to make sure that chiefs are following up with principals, so on and so forth. There's finalizations of the individualized education plans, research-based strategies supporting instruction for grade bands. That is actually in the instructional toolkit. So now you see how some things are interwoven, and we may share things, share information in one indicator as we would in another. Our managed choice policy, again, a policy that was passed earlier this year by the Board of Education and zone implementation. We are moving to zoning our middle schools. So that's just another indication that we have made progress. And professional learning communities. Each school has a professional learning community. Each grade level is, in a sense, a professional learning community. And they are planning both grade level and vertical. Where we're not fully implemented, there's ongoing work with the project management plan for Invest in Tomorrow. That won't be complete likely until maybe quarter 1 of next year because there's just so much that is involved in making sure that's purely successful. And the Medicaid compliance report. Again, that's something that's ongoing. You get the report, you report quarterly. If it didn't come and it meets in the middle, then what happens is you have to report after and you just have to take the no. Next slide. And finally, this is just another example of one of the maintenance type indicators that we have. We needed to make sure we developed a course catalog that was clear and understandable for our families and students. And yes, we've made those adequate progress in this quarter, and we've fully met this actually last quarter. Next slide. So what I wanted to do is take a few moments to talk about what we are now delving into, which is our new academic plan. Our state monitor has already provided myself, the superintendent, my colleague, Deputy Turner, the Chief of Staff, a recommendation of how next year's plan is to look. But it's going to be aligned around our new vision, which I want to consistently put in front of our families, which is activating dreams and unlocking potential. And we need to make sure that academic plan is going to cultivate a culture of academic excellence for all and a community of empathy, equity, and accountability that empowers students to succeed beyond graduation. We are also taking into account for the new academic plan, how are we tailoring this to meet the needs of what we say a portrait of an RCSD graduate is. There are actually a few recommendations that call the administration to ensure that we have additional criteria for the cohort 2024, which are our current 8th graders. They will be rising into the 9th grade, and we have to keep this portrait of a graduate at the forefront, trying to interweave different experiences, different metrics that are around these eight sort of values that we want to see in each and every single one of our RCSD students. Next. And the academic plan will be aligned with the strategic plan and the 5 priorities. Priority 1, instructional excellence. Priority 2, provide healthy, joyful, and inclusive environment. Priority 3, recruit, grow, and retain. Priority 4, strengthen school, family, and community engagement. And finally, operational efficiency and excellence. And again, those priorities will set the tone for our next academic plan that is currently being developed by our state monitor collaboratively with the administration and will be presented to you all upon its approval. And with that being said, are there any questions?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Strickland. So I'm going to open the floor to questions. We're going to keep the questions to 2 questions per commissioner, and any additional questions that you may have, we can commit to the board question log. What I will do is start to my left, way up on the screen with the Zoom, with our parent representative, Monica. Do you have any questions or statements you'd like to make in regards to this evening's presentation?
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Strickland. Wonderful presentation. No questions at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll just do a roll call, and that'll Commissioner Griffin?
Yes, Dr. Strickland, congratulations. I do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
It was an excellent presentation, I will say that. My questions, I may have missed like that first 5 minutes before I was able to get on, but how have we addressed the teachers, the staffing as a whole? And my second part to that would be, have we been able to stabilize or hire coaches for the sports the athletics? Have we, let me back up. Have we been able to hire the coaches that we have for the current sports that we have at the schools? Have we been able to do that? Have we secured those? Those are my 2 questions.
Okay, Commissioner Griffin, so for the basis of the academic plan, those are not actual recommendations for it. However, I do know that we are making sure that we make ample progress towards meeting your expectations. I would ask for you to follow that up in the board log, and I'll definitely make sure you get the actual information that you're looking for. The area around staffing, again, it pretty much doesn't go beyond looking at it doesn't go beyond looking at evaluations. That's the only depth of staffing that is actually covered in the academic plan for the most part. However, we do know that there's other implications, our special education consent decree, our Part 154 corrective action plan that have staffing implications within them, which causes us to need another tool or another way to actually manage or monitor those metrics to determine if we can say yes or no to those questions that are before us each quarter.
Thank you.
Understood. Thank you, Dr. Strickland.
Commissioner Malloy?
Thank you. First and foremost, great presentation, Dr. Strickland. Congratulations. That just kind of rolls right off the tongue there, and it's fun to say. So, Dr. Strickland, congratulations. You know, we asked and you delivered on this. You put the board goals front and center right at the beginning of this presentation.
Yes.
And that helps us focus as a board on what really matters, on those student academic outcomes. So that's really why we're here. So thank you for uplifting those goals.
Yes.
You know, the board is going to be, I love that you mentioned the governance framework, because we're going to be developing our own progress monitoring calendar to meet those goals, especially as related to when we go about supervising or evaluating whoever that permanent superintendent is, whenever that happens. So thank you for rolling this out, because we'll be able to reconcile, I hope. This is the management piece, and I think the public doesn't always understand the difference between management, the day-to-day operations of what happened in this district versus governance, which is the board responsibility, right? And we're not here to do the day-to-day operations of the district. And so I really love, as we continue as a board to get ready to adopt this governance model for ourselves, I love that you have this clear plan in place that we can reconcile that with. So thank you so much. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you so much for such a clear presentation. And I am feeling optimistic for the first time in a long time. This is a great academic plan. And I know we can meet these goals for our students with it. And I can't think of anyone else I'd want to see helping us meet those goals but you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. So Dr. Strickland, we're just going to say that's the name of the night. Dr. Strickland, we're going to celebrate you all night. You know, I liked a lot of the elements presented in the plan.
Yes.
Or the updates, should I say, very thorough from what I could see. I really enjoyed the fact that the school chiefs are visiting 3 times, and they have the virtual as well as in person, and that the zones are aligned with that. You did mention, and you know I'm championing the whole grading policy and social promotion piece.
Absolutely.
I'm happy that that's happening and that we have put the continuous improvement lens on that. When we talk about feedback loops being provided when we're out observing educators, are we in reverse allowing educators to provide feedback for how this experience is feeling for them? You know, maybe some barriers they're facing in the classroom or day-to-day based on the expectations, you know, so that we can
Yes.
Support them?
That is a fantastic question. So yes, it can't just be one way. It has to also be reciprocal. We need to be sure that we are hearing out from school leaders on what their day-to-day challenges are with the annual professional performance review process, which is the evaluation metric for our teachers. Often you will hear, you know, sometimes it's not, it doesn't look the same all the time, and, you know, people, you know, they do their best. Of course, you want to do your best. You're being evaluated. But those are just as important as our day-to-day classroom walkthroughs. So one of the things that I've charged school chiefs and my team and principals is at least 5 classroom visits a week. So that actually when you go in to see that teacher during a formal observation, there's no surprises. You know what I mean? And that's the value of ensuring that. Again, we hear time, the amount of time that an APPR takes to input and do it with quality. It is very cumbersome. And even if it's in my former life as a principal, it takes long. It takes a long time. But if you got to do the time management pieces and think about how you can carve out portions of your day and hopefully not have to take so much work home. But, you know, we do hear that, and we actually, one of our first avenues for listening, we moved from using PeopleSoft for teacher evaluations to actually using TeachBoost, which is outside of the organization, but that's where our information is stored. And it has unique features that allow teachers to get feedback quicker from principals. It makes the process all electronic. You can kind of correspond back and forth, so on and so forth.
Okay, thank you. And so my second question for you is really light, actually, or maybe it's not so light, but it's on slide 19, and it's the portrait of the graduate, which I'm excited to see that we've identified, what our graduating students should look like. And I'm wondering, and this may exist already, we have measurements, and
For the portrait of
are we
graduate?
measuring those goals?
As of right now, we don't have any measurements around the portrait of a graduate. But
Right.
what I will say is, I'm thinking about Edison and the employability standards that are being created. We're going to have to do some deep dives within executive cabinet to determine how are we seeing, these elements within or embedded within our students.
Right, yeah, because if you call me a change maker, right? I might be like, I'm a change maker, but I want to know that I'm lined up with what we've identified that to be. So I can't wait to see this fleshed out and an actual blueprint for what it is to be the things listed here. And then finally, on slide 15, this is not a question because I only said two. The research-based strategies, I'm glad that we said we're using those. I just would, and I'm assuming that we are also making sure they're evidence-based strategies as well.
Yes,
Knowing your
research-based,
excellence.
evidence-based.
Okay.
So just a quick preview. The traditional model in, say, fourth mathematics.
Okay.
Usually went with an I do, we do, you do type model. Our illustrative math curriculum actually encourages, which is actually more culturally responsive, a you do, we do, I do model, giving students that first opportunity to take the time to actually grapple with the content so that they actually can start crafting their own knowledge through that process. They're not just given the answers or how to do something. They are engaged in a type of inquiry-based learning, and that is actually going to help our students be problem solvers and be successful.
Awesome, thank you so much. I'm going to move along to Vice President LeBron with any questions or statements.
Yeah. First of all, I do like this format. I just want to point out,
Sure.
I think President Ellie and myself have been the only two, it's weird to be in this role now, the two that were here before there was ever a state monitor or a appointed state educator who kicked off, if you will, the original plan that then led into the state monitor's plan.
Yes.
So it's been a very long time, long 6 years of watching this sort of develop over time and being presented in different formats, but essentially a lot of the same issues that have been in at least 20 other reports prior to the state monitor's report, because I don't feel like there was nothing new in the state monitor's report that other previous consultants who have come into the district and have put out there, external or internal. So I definitely would just uplift that this is, for me, the best formatting, because quarter one, quarter two, quarter three, we can sort of see whether we're progressing or digressing, if you will. And so that leads to the one question I do have on instructional transformation, question one, which is why there was an increase in the no's on quarter three. And actually, this one seems to be going backwards if you look at quarter one. So I'm on slide number 11, yeah. Just looking at that going up versus going back down. So it was at 6% for quarter one as not being responsive. Quarter two, we went back up to 15%, but then we're dipping down again. But just sort of, I guess my question is why that trend? Yeah.
So that fantastic question again. So I want to give you an example. Removal of outdated materials. At first, we thought we had a contract that was going to go forth. Someone was going to come in, actually get into our schools, package those materials, and get them out. And then it fell through. Okay. So as a result, we have to say no now. And, I'm here for it to provide the explanation. But it also helps you all see, what it is that we kind of constantly struggle with. I know that we continue to ask our general counsel information about, well, we can't throw the text, like what, they're just gonna sit in our schools and it begins to have clutter, but what can we actually do with those actual materials? There was a portion of the time for the corrective action plan, I pulled out specific ones where we were satisfying the old elements of the corrective action plan, but now that it was redone, we could not say yes. So we had to wait for a new corrective action plan. If Q4, hopefully it'll be a yes. So there's a lot of those instances, absolutely.
I just thank you, and I just say, I think it's also important for people from the outside looking at this, sort of understanding why it looked like we were making progress, but then it looks like we're not in certain areas. But that totally makes sense. Thank you. And I just want to uplift that we can't give away old textbooks. There are too many laws around how we get rid of textbooks that's a whole other conversation. But it's an issue that has come up multiple times in my 6 years here. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice President LeBron. President Elliott?
Thank you, Chairwoman. In reference to the textbooks, what are we doing with the warehouse?
So I know that's a constant struggle. I do know that, honestly, some materials we're looking at some materials that help provide academic interventions for our students that are being counted, and we're starting to get inventory over that and determining if some of those items are salvageable and usable. But I can't go beyond there, but I have been told to go on and take a ride.
You haven't been over there yet.
Not yet.
There, from what I last was told, there's $50 million worth of supplies over there in the warehouse. That is, and what that goes to is that we have not had the accountability or the oversight over what has been purchased. And so it is important that we're spending our money, the taxpayers' money, with due diligence.
Absolutely.
Looking at that warehouse, we have not spent the taxpayers' money with due diligence. And so that really does have to be addressed. But in terms of the portrait of a graduate, the chairwoman has really asked my question, but it is important that we do have metrics for what does a dreamer look like, what does an innovator look like, what does an advocate or critical thinker look like, in addition to excelling instructionally. Because I see these things, but I don't see where there's one that speaks to success in learning here per se. So maybe it's embedded in critical thinking and lifelong learners or change makers, but I don't see that because that's also important that we look at how they're succeeding academically as well. That has to, in my mind, that should also be included in a portrait of a graduate, but it is important that we understand and the community understands that when we're saying that this is a graduate, what do these elements mean? How do we measure that each one of our students? I'm excited about it because this really can have impact in our community. If we've got people thinking from this perspective, we could turn the city around. Absolutely. I believe that with all of my heart on this. And so, but we also have to ensure that we are able to measure it such that, you know, when we're in the community understands how it's measured as well. So thank you.
Thank you, President Elliott, right. Like our babies having driver's license and work permits and all of those things prepared. So I'm going to move on over to Commissioner Santiago with any questions or statements.
Thank you, Commissioner Simmons. Just a quick question. On slide 14, I saw that one of the actions that's been being taken moving forward is a revision in high school selection process. I was just wondering, you know, if there's any deeper information as far as those revisions. I know this is definitely something that's been a conversation for many through the past few years. So I just wanted to hear what we're doing to make it better and some of the revisions that's been made currently.
So the few things that I can speak of was actually connected to digitizing the actual high school offerings and whatnot. What does a high school have to offer? What it is that they can actually go and view to determine if they want to go to that high school. I do know that under Deputy Turner, there have been holdbacks instituted so that we are spreading, like for students that are late entry, they still have the opportunities to get in certain schools that had a tendency not to have any open spaces, if you will. I don't know if Deputy Turner, do you have anything additional to add to that?
Yeah, if I understood the question correctly, in addition to ensuring that our families and students have as much information as possible about the high schools and the different programs and options that each of our high school might be able to afford our students, we're also working in the middle school, making sure that our counselors are connecting our middle schoolers with visiting high school or having our high school counselors come to the middle school and sharing about their specific high school and what they offer as a way of giving them that information and recruiting them. We also share the information with local charter schools as students are thinking about possibly coming back to the district once they enter high school.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that those are some good indicators, for some revisions moving forward. I would just like to, I think third, because I think two other people have spoke about this, but
Don't start.
finding
Commissioner
ways,
Santiago.
finding ways to measure the portrait of a graduate.
Yeah.
They look like really, really great goals, and so it'll be great to see if we can find ways that we're preparing our young people for these goals here. So
Can I just add to that portrait of a graduate, just to take us back into work we were doing with developing the strategic plan. So just to provide clarity, I think definitely agree what does it mean for our CSD graduate, what are the skills they need to possess. The portrait of a graduate tells us that if we do our job well in educating and educating the whole child, that this is what that portrait of that graduate looks like, not necessarily matrix, for those students, but our students will possess these skills, right? Have these skills available to them as we do a great job of providing a quality education for them. So I just wanted to provide clarification around what the idea was through the work of that portrait of a graduate.
Thank you for that. And thank you so much, Commissioner Santiago. So are you saying, Deputy Turner, that there's somewhere, maybe not in this portrait, but there's somewhere where upon graduation, we expect certain things, because there are some school districts that'll say, the kids will have driver's licenses, they'll have permits, they'll, be ready for this type of thing. That is somewhere else, you're saying?
Weird. I think in the discussion and what our board has brought up has got us thinking that might be work in addition that we need to
Okay.
clarify.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to separate what the idea was behind this portrait of a graduate. So once a student graduates from RCSD, these are the qualities that they will possess because we provided a high-quality education for them.
Perfect, thank you. Commissioner Santiago, I think I might have cut you off, and I apologize. Did you have something, one more
just
thing?
a final comment. And I think that would just, for me personally, go into a deeper question, which doesn't have to be answered tonight. And I'm sure it will be shared at some point through a presentation for the ESA committee. But what are some programs that we have in place to accomplish this, and what are some after school or different opportunities that we're getting our young people into to accomplish the portrait of a graduate? And I think that would be a deeper question, for later on. But it is something that I'd love to hear about.
Thank you so much. And Commissioner Patterson.
Thank you, and also congratulations. I just found out that you received your doctorate, so that's a very huge accomplishment, so congratulations to you.
Thank you so much.
Yep, definitely. And good presentation, overall. So I'd like to start with the positives. Only one negative, but some of my colleagues have also spoke relative to it. So the distribution center, or the warehouse as they call it, So when I first, came to the district, I was tasked by our president with looking into, the distribution center or the warehouse, whatever you want to call it, especially, chairing audit. So just to help you, I know you don't have the answers to this because you said you haven't been out there, but when it comes to, I'll speak specifically social studies, and so I looked into these things myself. So I have the response to you, what we can do with books, especially when it relates to social studies, what we can do in an effort to get rid of those. When I looked into social studies, which we have a large amount over there, we teach, or I'll say history, right? We teach American history, but we don't teach world history. So therefore, even third world countries, don't want our books. So we can't even give them away because in other countries, they teach world history. So looking into that, knowing that, we then can get rid of those books because we cannot sell them off. So I reached out to the New York State School Board Association, their attorney, way back then. So you're talking well over a year ago now. If we can't sell them off, if we can't give them off, yeah, it doesn't look good to the public that we spent a lot of money on these books and, we did nothing with them or we couldn't utilize them, whatever the response is. But we can, get rid of those books. There's no reason for those books to sit over there and just collect dust and space because we need that space over there. So if we can get rid of them, maybe that's a solution for you.
Thank you,
just one quick-
Commissioner Patterson. So I'm going to allow you, Dr. Strickland, and then Deputy Turner, I see that you had a
Yep,
statement.
just one quick clarification around history, the world history. We do have Global Studies 9 and 10, but I'm not discounting what you're saying. I still have to further look into those recommendations and, even your colleague.
Yeah, these books over there aren't global history or world history. It's just American history. The ones I'm specifically speaking of that were over there that were pointed out to me when I did my walkthrough. Thank you.
If I may, I
Deputy
just.
Turner?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because that is something that we've have been discussing or wrestled with for a long time, and just sort of some food for thought as I'm sitting here thinking about that. I haven't been here for a little over 16 years. I think our condition at the warehouse and the surplus there has a lot to do, and I've seen it with the ever-changing leadership and priorities. So I just want to be really mindful of that oftentimes when we have a new superintendent, they come with whatever they were familiar with, and now we undo and we adopt, a new textbook, a new framework. So it is something that our system has overturned, and then those become obsolete because then somebody else comes and we've adopted a new textbook or a new framework, and those are no longer, and they sit there and build up and build up. And it is a serious, if you ever go there, unfortunately, I have been there, it is something that really, we have to really think through, what that means for us moving forward. Thank goodness now a lot of things are electronic and not necessarily books, but I just wanted to add to that's years and years of this
Yeah.
evolving door with different priorities and focus that has created that issue.
I appreciate those comments because we recognize that does have a direct impact on student learning. Teachers try to master curriculum and then, like you said, it's undone. And that speaks to the accountability of us as a Board of Education to make sure we are putting up guardrails and ensuring that we move seamlessly with what we have agreed to do versus what's been done over the years. So I appreciate the clarity, Deputy Turner and Dr. Strickland on that. State Monitor, this is the academic plan, and so I'm sure you have a thought, and I'd like to extend the mic to you.
Thank you, Chairwoman Simmons, and yes, I do have a thought. First, I want to say congratulations to the district, to the staff, and to the board for monitoring the academic plan and having presentations done to the board on a regular basis. This is our business, education. Student outcomes, so we need to make sure that we monitor that very carefully so we can keep track of the progress that we're making as a district. We are working on developing a new academic plan for next year, trying to change the format a little, an academic plan that is going to be aligned with the strategic plan. We want to have a laser focus on student achievement, on those 5 priorities, on the 4 academic goals that the board approved last January, so we can say, yes, we are doing the best for the students in the Rochester City School District. So again, a lot of work has been done, ongoing communication between teaching and learning, the chief of staff, Deputy Turner, the superintendents, and we want to make sure that the district continues to make the progress that is necessary for me to go away.
Well, touche. Okay, thank you so very much. This is, again, a great presentation, and close out this particular presentation and move into our next presentation by the academic department, who has been waiting so patiently. I'm going to call up Carly Belsma.
Attendance, not academic.
Attendance, what did I say?
Academic,
I'm sorry, thank you, President. Attendance department, which we know is crucial to also our student learning. So as Ms. Jelsma
There you go.
approaches, we'll give her a minute to transition.
Thank you. Good evening, President Elliott, Vice President LeBron, commissioners, deputies, RCSD community at large, and I do have members from my wonderful team with me tonight in the audience. Just wait for Tom to get it up. Thank you. Next slide, please. So here we have the newly adopted RCSD vision and mission statement. This means very much to the attendance department as we truly embody and believe in RCSD 1. As you see behind me, we do forge ahead as a team. We work very collaboratively, so thank you for being here tonight, everyone. Next slide. This is the attendance department, our vision and mission statement. We envision an educational environment where attendance is celebrated as a key component of academic achievement, providing every student with the foundation they need to achieve their dreams and positively impact their community. Our mission is we aim to promote a positive and supported school culture where students, families, and community are engaged in promoting regular attendance and reducing chronic absenteeism. Thank you. So here we have the RCSD strategic plan. It couldn't have come at a better time with Deputy or Dr. Strickland's presentation. Yep. So really, we are so impressed as a team that we have chronic absenteeism as a priority. This is really putting forward and charging us with really strategic plans and outlines of what is expected to come. I want to highlight 3 of the strategies, and we will get into this later in the presentation. One with the Rockwood Restorative Team, we are beginning to work again very collaboratively with that team to address Tier 3 issues, ultimately what we are also calling almost a Tier 4. So we really, really appreciate the help and collaboration with that team. When it comes to the mental health supports, we are under the Family and Community Engagement umbrella, so we're able to evaluate with intentional purpose of what supports we already have, but where we need to leverage and gain more community partners. And last but not least, with the problem solving, right? So it really indicates in here that it's not only the attendance department, this is the Office of Parent Engagement and community partners collaborating together to tackle chronic absenteeism. So this is some of the data, and I do want to reference the fact that on a weekly basis, the board does receive attendance data through the weekly memo. That is the chronic absenteeism, the average daily attendance by school, but also district trends. So we're going to delve a little bit into this. It's the average daily attendance by year. You will see in 1920, that's when we went out with the pandemic. Attendance was captured by the participation on a Chromebook. So again, we had to pivot our plan, and as we go through 2021, again, we were fully remote that year, and then we slowly entered back into the building. In 22 is when we came back fully, and what we did is really dealt with the weight, and this was not just alone for RCSD, right? This is the entire community at large of how we had to deal with the aftermath of COVID. In 22-23, we move up to about 78.8, and right now, as it stands, we're at about 79.4. These are not huge increases. I want to recognize that. But they are moving in the right direction. And that's exactly what we want to see more of. This is our average daily attendance by month. This is a critical data point when we're looking how we can support students and families. If we delve into how we start off, around 82, and then if you see by December, we enter down at 75.6. This is where we have to look at our half-days. Half-days are very, very difficult with student attendance, and I can say that the leadership team has put together a very strong plan trying to get more students involved and participate on those half-days. I know that we have social emotional learning, and it's something that we are looking to grow within the district. As we look at March, I'm sorry, Tom, if you could go back. Thank you. If we want to address March right there, that was the day that we had a boil water advisory, and the next day we did have very low attendance. So you can see how even a matter of a day can dip quite a bit. We are climbing back up in April, and right now in May we're around the same, about 79. So this is the participation by grade level. I want to point out the extreme obvious. Again, this is a chart that has been reviewed by the board on a weekly basis. When you look at this and you see a glaring fact, you're going to see that 9th grade. And it's going to cause us to say what's going on, right, with that 9th grade. That is the students that not only enter that grade, but do not leave that grade. For example, they do not have enough credits to progress to the 10th, 11th, 12th. What that chart is capturing right now, and that actual decimal point is about 64.7, that's the students that are held at that grade level. Why this is so critical is that we have to look at what are we putting in place, right, to mitigate these factors, to change the course of this action. This aligns exactly with the strategic plan. This is the portrait of a graduate. This is the work we need to do when it comes to our middle schools. Even further, when we go back, building great routines and rituals through the elementary level, so that by the time that we enter that 9th grade, we are going to tell a different story. It will be a different picture. This is the data that we report to the state. I know that we've been going into a lot of the average daily attendance, but this is the actual chronic absenteeism data. And again, you will see marked goals in the strategic plan where we want to lessen that by 25% over the course of the next 4 years. But where you see elementary and middle, again, this is a review from what we had in the fall, is that it was a decrease in chronic absenteeism, about 7%. And then you see at the secondary level, just under 1. Again, this is not, what we wouldn't celebrate, right? That these are huge monumental moves, but they're going in the right direction, which means we need to capture what we're doing at that elementary and middle and grow upon that. We need to put more focus on our secondary level. I cannot stress enough, and this will be the theme throughout this presentation tonight, is that this is everybody. This is all hands on deck. It is every player, community at large, every staff member that's going to help make this change. Next slide. Thank you. So this is our systemic change model. This is a widely used data point, or a resource, I should say, by Attendance Works. We like this model because what it has at the heart of it is our students and our families. Every single thing we do, especially when it comes to attendance, needs to impact positively students and families. You see the school around it. The school is the insulation. That is their home, right? Home away from home. And then each of the different components of it, so capacity building, actionable data, positive engagement, strategic partnerships, adequate and equitable resources, shared accountability, those are what insulate that work. And then you see at the whole of the district and the community, really that protective bubble. They're not separated out, they're one together. Sustainable attendance, Tom, if you could go back for a second. Sustainable attendance efforts are supported by strong district, school, and community leadership. Again, this is not in silos, it's meant to be working together. Okay, follow up on the 5. We call this our 5 main reasons, right, of chronic absenteeism in the Rochester City School District. We do want to share with you, this is really, really critical. Chronic absenteeism after COVID is a federal, it's a national crisis. Even within our own state with the Big 5, they are mitigating concerns that they did not have before. There is research on this. What we can say, though, that when we focus back to Rochester, we need to do every single thing we can at learning what works here, what will not work here. How do we serve our families? What interventions make the biggest impact? Family crisis, homeless and housing, school safety, mental health challenges, and transportation have been identified as the 5 main and leading barriers. Next slide. Thank you. So what we really wanted to do is that although we're giving you data, we want you to be aware and be very, very in tune of all of the efforts that we're putting forward. The strategies that we're giving you are not only just the individual strategies that work within the classroom, but they're much larger than that. Again, it goes back to this systemic model, is that when you can do this at a large-scale effort, putting best practices forward, you're going to have a larger and positive impact. When it comes to family crisis, we do have current partnerships with Monroe County, DHS, and our FACT, so our preventative services. We are looking to expand upon this. We are located in Monroe County, so it is only natural that we would be able to utilize the supports and call upon greater supports of our community. We truly are in it together. And when it comes to mitigating what families are dealing with, these are survival issues. So we cannot just shy away from that. We need to absolutely recognize it. When it comes to the community school strategies, right now we have 18 community schools, and one of the parts of the strategic plan in reference to priority 4 is that by 1 year from now, is that we will have all of the community school models utilized in every single building. Why this is so effective is that it utilizes the strength of each individual building and leverages the support of the community. It identifies where the gaps are and closes in on that so that schools can succeed. Again, every school family looks a little bit different, but there's elements of every school that have these commonalities that they need. So equitable resources, again, social emotional learning, after-school programs. Homeless and housing. This has been a really profound experience that we've been invited to, and I really have to thank the work of our leadership team that has made this happen. So we are now part of the Rochester Monroe Anti-Poverty Initiative, and we've been invited to be a part of an integrative study. This was a very powerful moment for members of the attendance department and also Office of Parent Engagement, where we went and met at the United Way and met with a research firm that is really delving in to looking into the intersection of how education, homelessness, and actually transportation are barriers to student learning. So thank you again for all of this great work. These recommendations that they will produce will really drive home what we need to put in place in our buildings. We do also have our Families in Transition department, which is unique to our CSD, and they're providing many crisis supports for our homeless students. School safety. I had mentioned earlier the work with the Rock Restorative Team, so this is only furthered and almost exemplified with the work of the Rock Restorative Partnership. When we met, we said, okay, we've got the same group of kids. How can we collaborate on a much larger level? And this has been under the leadership of Deputy Turner. So what we were able to do is pull together multiple avenues of data. So this is students struggling with suspension. This is students that have extreme attendance problems and above academic struggles, but also struggles within the community. What we're able to do is look at this together, all of these students, and say, what is the highest level of intervention that we can put in place? Because often it is a safety-first situation. We're going to be able to track these students and see their positive progression back into the buildings. I think this is going to be a really important move as we build capacity in our middle schools, and again, we strengthen our new high schools. The alignment with, the alignment with OPE. We partner very closely. At one point, it was really considered, OPE and attendance on kind of buffering student learning and how they can support and be that foundation, those guardrails of it. Not only do we work in really close collaboration, but when it comes to school safety issues, we work with people that are in the building already. So that's all homeschool assistants, parent liaisons, and attendance assistants to really promote positive school climate and culture. And if I want to back up, again, I really commend this leadership team and the board of approving this strategic plan that put things forward that really command our attention for, again, the restorative practices needing to be in every single building. This work aligns so much of what we do. Mental health challenges. I really do want to uplift the RCSD clinical staff, and I do not mean to leave out any position, but I am talking about the counselors, social workers, psychologists, behavior specialists, folks on assignment, our teachers, all of our staff, right, that provide that crisis support to our students each and every day. This can never be minimized in the way that this is the relationship building, and we are that home away from home during the day. There are really important plans and interventions and safety tools that are put in place for our students that then can carry out when they go home and are provided by wraparound services. This is also an area, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking to expand upon. And we can, and we will. That's the community partnerships. Rochester is resource rich. Can't say it enough. Resource rich. That makes us unique. One of the aspects that we need to be able to do, though, is, again, evaluate which partnership is working best for our schools, and it might work for a certain group of kids over here, and we need to expand upon that for another grade level. Again, when we look at the data, it's building strong rituals and routines. We can do this through community partnerships and school staff at the lower grade levels. By the time we hit middle school, we really need to have some targeted supports that build in a good practice of what will be the future. When it comes to the secondary level, this needs to be a targeted focus, right? This is the portrait of a graduate. This is where we want to get to. Everything we need to do must insulate that. And I really do believe, as I do with my team, the attendance department is very committed to making that positive impact on our students and their families. Next slide. Transportation. So, with the transportation, there's some really interesting ways that we said, how can we support? Again, I'm impressed. So, right, it's strategic. It's the priority of, 5C, that it wants to improve the efficiencies of our transportation, recognizing this is a very serious issue. This is how kids get to and from school. It's 101. But the intricacies of what is holding us back really layers into the homeless and housing issue, right? If a family is constantly moving, we can change an address, but it might not be the correct address within the next week. One of the things we did, and we talked about this back, I believe in late fall, is that we identified a group of wrong addresses. And we said, if we can correct those through our community partnerships, will that make an impact? Will it matter? We have corrected quite a bit. And we do believe it does make a difference because we're able to provide a bus to that student or to at least have the communication home to school cleaned up. But here's the other layer that we got into, is that we identified a lot of families that were actually homeless. So that is really important to know how we can then refer back and get the necessary supports to those students that are in the most vulnerable state. Furthermore, we learned a lot about our families and their after-school plans. You can't just assume an address is wrong. We identified the fact that some families are splitting it between parents, some grandparents, and we needed to provide further services. We rely back on our wonderful social-emotional team. We don't work in silos, so once we knew that, the attendance department was able to connect with social workers and counselors and say, hey, this family needs further outreach. So that has been powerful. And we are able to continue that on throughout the summer. This is a review from the fall, so I can make this one pretty quick. But we are now under the Family and Community Engagement umbrella. This is powerful because you don't have to go very far to find your alignment. We have a human services lens. Without taking into that critical look into what the root causes of absenteeism are, we're not going to get to the solution. We are supporting schools by the aligned building needs and guided attendance interventions. So again, this is meant to say that our amazing bilingual staff support our bilingual programs in bilingual schools. They are able to support their colleagues, right? And they're able to work in tandem. We have 2 staff that are going back to school for school social work, and that is allowing them to work with high special education, high needs buildings and seeing it and guiding a therapeutic approach to that. Early warning system, the attendance department has been a partner in forming and, well, I shouldn't say forming, but guiding the panorama process. Why this is integral is that this is a tool that we're going to be able to use. It's a proactive tool. I know that you heard a couple of weeks ago a wonderful presentation given by the school chiefs, and this panorama tool is really, really essential in the MTSS process, as attendance is one of its pillars. Again, can't stress enough, it's a tool, but it would be used to move into proactive attendance data that we can look into. Weekly leadership meetings, this happened again in an organic fashion. The attendance department attends weekly meetings at the schools, and there was a group of leaders that kind of reached out and said, we'd like some more coaching. We want to learn how to do this better. Can we come together? And it grew. It started off with one, and then it kind of grew to 3 or 4 and 5. What we were able to do on a regular basis is come together as a team, discuss data, discuss best practice, and learn as a leader how to facilitate great attendance work. This has been really pivotal as we're looking to grow that model across our district. The attendance department provides cross-departmental support. Right now, we're working with the head clerical staff to provide what is streamlining best practices when it comes to attendance at that operational level in a building. Again, operations, it's kind of the 101. It's very, very important that we do that in an organized manner, so we'll be able to streamline that work. We also partner with special education and homeschooling and placement. So by this, just a fast example, is that when it comes to homeschooling and they're in need of home visits, to reach out to families, we again work with our community partners, get the correct addresses, and then if need be, we will go out and visit those homes in order to get the necessary paperwork. Thank you. Breaking down silos. I think this is a very proud moment for our department. We gave you our word back in November that we would continue to work across our internal systems of how we would get the message out. And the best way to get the message out is to just kind of keep going group by group, making relationships, and it's okay to make relationships within our own amazing RCSD family. So up there you see, and this has happened multiple times, not usually just one, we have presented in front of these different groups. And it allows us to get feedback on how, as a department, we can do a better job. What I would like to add, the two at the bottom, assistant principals, we have the privilege to, we'll be speaking to them later this month, and teachers in June. Go teachers. So what also came out of this was how we were coordinating all of our data. One of the best things you can do is you can control how you communicate. We were able to take our historic attendance manual, and we made that into a website. We utilized our internal systems so that no matter what role you have in the RCSD, because you do have an ID number, you can log in and access all of that information. Thank you, Mr. Poffler, for building that. But it is really fantastic because what you're also able to do is change it in real time, and there are so many of those departments that call on us and say, can you make us a section, or can you add this piece? And we do. So that has been overwhelmingly positive. Okay, so getting into some data, and so I want to be very clear with this data is that this is cumulative. This is taking September through the end of April. And so this right now is the highest average daily attendance through the district. The close contenders, we are talking decimal points off. So we have Charles Carroll, number 46 at 89.61, which is fantastic. That school has created a beautiful and positive celebration of positive attendance. Whether you are a teacher, yes, thank you. Whether you are a teacher, you are an administrator, you are the AP, or you're the counselor, and parent liaison, you speak the same language. They work integrative, and that has really insulated their awesome work. I do need to add, though, again, this is really in close count where you have number 23 and number 53 that were just decimal points below. Then we have School of the Arts, awesome, 90%, almost headed towards 91. We have to learn what we do great so that we can keep growing upon that. They have a very, very strong team that works in identifying root causes of attendance problems, but also their early intervention. I really do want to call out the fact that their MTSS team is essential into everything that they do. They're always looking at how do we improve student outcomes. This has been a long-standing system in place at SOTA, and I think it's something that we can really learn from. Also, they have a really great outreach team, whether that's the social workers and the parent liaison, homeschool assistant. And then we have middle school. What I want to highlight about Dr. Alice Holloway Young School is that their use of the community school strategies. We work very closely with the person over there that's doing the role, and there is not a time, whether it's dealing with homelessness, dealing with crisis situations, that we can't call upon it. I think that that person has really come in and really delved into the model, used to do the work as a parent liaison, so has great background. We can learn even from schools in which I know that we are shifting and with a reconfiguration. It doesn't mean that the work can't continue. And most improved, because this matters as well. We have to highlight great effort, so we gotta call this, is that Clara Barton, school number 2, improved their attendance by almost 3%. I will tell you, yeah, thank you. I have had such a wonderful conversation with this principal, and what it was about is I said, Principal Lee, what did you do? Because I know what you did, but I want to hear what you did. And she had shared with me is that as a leader, I made it a #1 priority. I said this was non-negotiable, and I wasn't going to do anything different. That's a beautiful thing. That's what we need our buildings to do. And again, I don't want to just diminish the great work that we are seeing across the district, because they do. Our building leaders call upon us all the time, and I want to thank them for that. But she also has a great team where they call upon community partners when they have some of the most difficult cases, and they're able to call in the community providers and have treatment team meetings. That's really powerful, right? When you don't have the answer, sometimes you need to get every stakeholder at the table, and then you are there for the child. Northwest College Prep, way to go. This is absolutely wonderful. Director Holloman just had an event out there, which was really, really great. And the climate and culture of the school has you're starting to feel some, really, really good movement to it. Again, they have a person, the homeschool assistant, that has had great work in his student family support and is truly committed to not only working in his outreach efforts, but he teaches that throughout the social emotional realm in his school. And Edison Tech. Thanks, Tom. Is that this really is phenomenal. And I know that when I mentioned that great leadership meeting, Edison Tech has really made such a strong commitment, because they have such a strong foundation of saying, we are committed to changing our attendance. We want this to change. And I will get into one of the things that they did that I think was just so exemplary surrounding student voice. But one of the great aspects is you see it's an improvement, 2%, but also P-TECH, their program, they worked together, truly together, to improve. This is phenomenal. This is what we want to see more of. Our communities-based partners, you'll see the large picture. They came out for an event, and it was really great. Next steps. So I want you to know these are not just goals. We are already stepping into this work. And so one of the biggest pieces is student voice and agency, and I feel that Deputy Turner and all the decisions that we're making says, okay, and what's the student voice, and what's the parent voice? And I know being under the family and community engagement umbrella, that's exactly where we need to be, because this is essential. What Edison was able to do was invite not only just students with great attendance, but students with improved attendance to their attendance team meetings and hear from them. What worked, what was going on, what they enjoyed about school, what they didn't like about school. But that was a really pivotal moment, and I know that that is happening in pockets throughout the district. That is something that we need to grow into. I will tell you in the fall that that's something that we want to see members, and we can insulate that through the model that we use for an attendance attendance team meeting. One of the other pieces is data. We must always be on the brink of learning from our students in our community. We will be utilizing the data that not only we get and collect from our Rock Hub Alliance attendance team, but also the qualitative data interviews that we're looking to have with students over the summer. I know home visits, right? Some people say, is it worth it, right? It is worth it. Because instead of sitting at a table, you're able to get out into the community and you can have a genuine conversation with a parent, with a family. You never know how far that's going to go. We will never minimize what you may discover at that moment and how you can help that family. It also is the qualitative data. It's a vulnerable, intervention for both sides, but it really can improve to be meaningful. The professional learning across the district. As you saw, is that we're very, very committed to working with all of our stakeholders within our CSD. We're not stopping now. We're going to keep on going. We have been welcomed by so many departments that just invite us to their professional learning communities, and we are learning in turn. So we're truly grateful. We've also been privileged. We were invited to speak again to the Special Education Task Force in the fall and to the asylum seekers. So this is really building capacity. And again, we get back to that model. This is everything. It takes everyone in order to change this. This will be exciting. We are going to have a family and community engagement back to school attendance awareness campaign that will kick off the school year. We are very, very excited, so please look out for that information to come. But as soon as this June, we're having an attendance consortium. This is a group of stakeholders, not only from the community, but different players that might not have an attendance voice. Oftentimes, teachers are actually not invited to the table. So what we're doing is getting the group together to, again, delve into our 5 areas of chronic absenteeism, but open up the conversation of how we can improve and possibly come up with different interventions. And then the district level support of the homeschool assistant and parent liaisons. This is the rock right now. This is huge. This is a really, really fiscally responsible decision where we did not add staff in order to make an impact in our district. We are training and guiding and giving support to the people that are already doing the work in the buildings. To me, this really goes back to that human services lens where we're going to learn from each other. Director Holloman has provided an amazing platform where we can do some training throughout the summer. And I know with my executive director, Kelly Briggs, this is the work that she wants to integrate throughout the year. With that being said, here's some pictures. There are many more, but these are just some of our pictures from our attendance challenge. And you'll have to admit, we didn't have a bad winter. That's okay. Not complaining. So it really wasn't a snowy one, but we were able to do this in quite a few schools, and we keep going. But yeah, that's about it. If there's any questions.
Thank you, Director Jelsma, for
Thank you.
your presentation, in-depth presentation. I'm going to open up the floor for questions. I'm going to start at the other end of the dais at this time, starting with Commissioner Patterson. State Monitor, did you?
Just a comment that attendance should be a priority. If we want student outcomes and student achievement to go up, we got to make sure that the students are here on a daily basis. What gets monitored gets done, so it's good to see that they're keeping track and that we are seeing an increase in attendance in some of our buildings.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Patterson?
Yes, good presentation, and thanks to you and your team. I think Xerox did a study decades ago, I should say, I know they did a study decades ago relative to that Rochester's rich in resources, but there's no interconnectedness. So I'm glad to see that, you're making those connections now and that interconnectedness. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you, and I really do want to commend, that's the work of really a greater perspective, right, of all the work of the social emotional teams and building administration. We've really been privileged, so thank you.
You're welcome. Relative to screen 6, if we can put that back up there. The dips, you said in March, the boil water advisory and something else. Now, even though that's for the entire month of March, just that one issue? Does that cause that much of a dip for that month?
Yes, when we have attendance that literally, I mean, the half days, it's almost cut in half, and that one particular day in March, it was even less than that. The goal is to become so strong that we are not as greatly impacted by those half days. Although we will build capacity, again, around half days and really getting more participation. The goal is on the other side is how can we ensure that our average daily attendance is through the roof in every building on a consistent basis. It will protect us from incidents like that. But is really important that we share a picture of exactly what's happening. If you look at last year in June, the days that, for lack of a better word, the smoke days, right? A lot of families.
What days?
Smoke days, remember from the wildfires, is that families
Yes.
didn't send their children to school, whether
Yes.
for health reasons or fear. I mean, they really didn't. So they're out of our control, but what we can control is the positive on the other side and help
Okay.
to grow that.
All right, thank you. And screen number 7, ninth grade, what specifically are we doing to target that, since there's so much of a dip there, what specifically is your team doing?
Yeah, that's a great question.
To target that
Yep.
age group or that, ninth grade?
Well, it also came down to data. So what we needed to do in our system was kind of like pull apart that ninth grade, right? Because as I shared, that one graph is kind of holding everyone in the same place. What we did, and this was really through the work for the administration and the directive, is that we were able to pull out students by credit, by need, and really outreach to those families and those teams to see where they are. There are some that are headed towards an alternative path, and we need to help guide that process. But when it comes to the overall intervention, and we can get these numbers for you of what that true ninth grade cohort looks like, it is not as low as what this graph indicates, so we can get those numbers. But there's also, Ruth, go ahead, Deputy Turner. Oh, go ahead.
I wanted to add too, in full transparency, as shared by our director earlier, is that when students enter high school, it's no longer social promotion, but there's also this idea of, in order to go advance to 10th grade, and so you need a certain credit, 5 credits or more. So we see a lot of school disengagement, and it's really, really challenging for us to really, really provide a meaningful support for that, besides improving those academic outcomes, but also making sure that we're catching those students early on and that we're giving them the resources that they need to support them academically, because the further they fall behind, the less engaged they are in school. They sort of feel like giving up. They can't pass a Regents, right? They're not passing their classes. They'll tell me, I'm in the 11th grade. I said, no, look at your credits. We talked about this. Technically, according to your credits, you're still a freshman. So this is an area that we have a lot of work to do, and it's not just simply the work of just the attendance, but holistically, like as an academic environment, looking at what are we doing to support our students from pre-K on, so that when we get to the 9th grade, we don't have this huge problem that we have both academically in attendance and also social emotionally. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there to give the whole picture that this is quite a challenge. That's why we were so excited to see that 9th grade was a focus in our strategic plan, because we really, really have to put all our heads together and create programs, supports to really make a difference. And it's going to take us, quite frankly, it's going to take us some time to do that.
Thank you, and you don't have to worry about submitting any data or anything like that. I'm fine with what you have supplied. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your response.
Thank you. Commissioner Santiago.
Yeah, I just want to echo the appreciation to see community partnership and collaboration when it comes to the attendance. I think we've seen in schools that have the chronic absenteeism issue, and definitely like Northeast, which went up in 3%. We see a lot of community engagement and trying just to provide wraparound services for our younger school age children, to ensure that their absenteeism, is really met by the root causes, in which you gave, 5 root causes that a lot of students are missing school for. And so I do have a question when it revolves around family crisis. I'm just wondering, like, when we identify that student is having some family crisis, like, what are we doing to support them? You know, whether it's a worker, because Monroe County Department of Human Services, in fact, is such of a huge system that a lot of families are kind of scared to tap into. And so I'm just wondering, like, what supports are we giving to families to help them through that process?
I'll jump right here. I wanted to underscore that for many of our community members, even myself, right, thinking of Monroe County Department of Human Services not always a welcomed resource. One of the things that we've been really fortunate to do with some of the support of some of our board members is to really strengthen that relationship. So what is important is there are preventative services that help families early on to avoid, right, those punitive interactions with Monroe County. And we have a dedicated individual that is assigned to work with our school district so that instead of getting into the foster care system or dealing with that punitive aspect, they're able to have resources through preventative services funds that allows them to address some of those issues. So some of it might be domestic violence. Some of it might be chronic illness, right? So that doesn't allow, you're a single parent and you have a chronic illness that causes you to be sick for several weeks and you can't really take care of your children, get them to school, you don't have that kind of support. So those services are dedicated for our families so that they don't have to call a whole bunch of people and figure out what's going on. Again, those funds are limited, but it's been really instrumental to look at those high needs and get them those resources to avoid that punitive interaction with that system.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, you know, that these are, like we said, in collaboration and working together, these are important things. And I also want to say, you know, just a little bit about, you know, the school culture and really promoting and pushing, you know, student engagement, whether it's events, you know, in the gym or, you know, I know for me personally, the half school days that I knew there was nothing going on, I am not going. I'm staying in bed. But the ones that, you know, I knew that we had events and we had time to come together as students, I was there. And so it is important, you know, just to make sure that we're really engaging our students, you know, with things that they are interested in to engage. And so thank you for the presentation. And it was great to see some of the work that's coming up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Santiago. At this time, I'll ask for President Elliott remarks or questions.
Thank you. So a couple of things. One is, and I've said this over again, I don't know if you are aware of my comments around this. We have the data as professionals. We don't communicate that data well enough to our families to have them to be a significant partner in this work. What do I mean by that? If we understand that whatever the amount of days that will move a student into chronic absenteeism, we don't communicate that well to them. We've got to make sure that they know the information that we know so that they can make different decisions. So that's how, because if they're just having them to be home, if they would probably have the information that we have, their decisions will be different, I believe. So I think we've got to look at how do we communicate the data that we have in a way in which will inform our parents about why it's important in this regard that they're in school, you know. More in school, increase academic performance and the whole bit. We don't do that well, at least I don't think we do that well. Maybe we're starting to do it. But we've got to be more of a significant partner and intellectual and a thought partner. We've got to be we have to ensure that we can count on our parents and families to be thought partners. And we haven't given them that opportunity. So I'm asking that we do that. So as we operationalize this work out, that we're also including parents as thought partners in the way in which they can help for their children to succeed. We haven't done that well. We just tell them they got to be in school, and that's fine, but they also need to understand the rationale of why it is important for them to be in school. And I believe that if we did that, we would see a significant increase. And then secondly, I've been saying this since I've been on the board. I think I'm a prophet, right? Because one of the things I've always said is that we're not going to need we're not going to need as much brick and mortar. I didn't know then what I was talking about, right? Here comes COVID, right? And here we are with a lack of absenteeism, our absentee rate is low. And so at some point, and I think that I've had some conversations with some people around, and Commissioner Santiago left, we've got to look at maybe advocating around what does it mean to be, how do we identify or define attendance or absenteeism, right? Because you could be home and get the work done. Some people could do well digitally, right? Or there's got to be different kinds of ways in which we look at, because if our kids, and I understand this is a national phenomenon, then what are we going to do? If kids are not coming to school, students are not coming to school, we've got to redefine it. Does that mean that they're not learning? I don't think so. But I think that we need to look at ways, and again, this is a conversation on the state level. How do we define attendance? How do we define absenteeism in order to ensure that we have an educated workforce? So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, President Elliott. Vice President?
Yes, thank you. Let me move this over. First of all, I just want to applaud your entire team because I do know that this is not easy work. I know that you are talking about it in high jargon, high level, but the reality is that it looks like you're a team making constant calls and outreach and showing up to people's houses who haven't answered their phone. Does the number still work? Do they still live here? 9 out of 10 times, no. So I just have to uplift that it is grunty work. I'm in that work too in different ways, so I get it. So I just have to applaud you all because I think I just have a personal gripe in general around society in this community, sort of romanticizing what education looks like or what services. Someone's homeless, they can get a shelter placement. No, that is a navigation a process as well, and it's not as quick or easy even when you partner with DHS. A few things I wanted to point out statistically as someone who provides services for homeless, both individuals and now families at the public library. Since February, we've seen about 46 homeless families, 42 who had RCSD students. And those families are not so easily placed into hotels, and oftentimes we're out of space right now in shelters, and so they're being negotiated in Airbnbs and in hotels outside of the city. I know I had to go pick up a family out in Henrietta in an Airbnb that was housed there because there were no hotels or shelters that would take a family of 8 with just one adult. I mean, there are complexities to these stories behind there, and I really hate that we sometimes simplify it and just, when we look at something and say, we got 2 people housed, and then you have someone else say, just 2 people. Well, do you know what it took to get these 2 people actually housed? It took months of work and advocacy and navigating a bunch of services. And so I just want to uplift that is the work that your team is doing as the first faces sometimes around the attendance issue. But in Monroe County right now, on average, it is 6 months wait to find housing privately, and that's with resources. That's if you're working, if you have your own security deposit. It is 8 to 10 months average wait to access mental health services. Again, this is if you are private insured, have money and resources, it doesn't matter. And so these are the realities that unfortunately our families are also facing, the same ones that we're all facing. And oftentimes the difference is that we may have a little bit more resources than them, but it is not changing the systems that currently exist and trying to navigate them. So I just have to uplift, and I know you said it's not a large marginal jump. It's a huge marginal jump based on the families and the circumstances that you're walking into. Because there are 9 out of 10 times a real severe issue as to why that student's not coming. So I just wanted to put that on the record and commend you and your team for expanding, breaking the silo, your team for breaking the silo out of just in the past of attendance, reaching out to those community partners, and figuring out what it does take to get someone from point A, where they're chronically homeless or homeless with children, to the shelter, to their apartment, to then getting their supplies and needs like furniture, right? Because getting an apartment is the first step, but then what happens after? People still have needs that we all enjoy: dishes, beds, bedding, curtains. And I know it sounds really simple, but these are the realities that a majority of our families are facing. And I don't mean to minimize other families like myself who work. The reality is that we know the data of our families and we know the income data too.
That's right.
And that's just the reality. So I just, again, have to commend you all. I just had to put out there that the work that you and your team do, these are just big words, but it is very much hard work, hard work. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Vice President.
Oh, I did have one. I'm sorry, I did have one
I'm going to
question.
allow her after her speech.
She did, because I had asked
But it's very
her.
real, you know, and I don't want to make light of that. That is very real. Those are the conditions, but I want to allow her the question that she was going to
I
present.
did. I just, all of the partners did make sense for me, but I just had a question around Rock the Future and the transportation piece.
Yes, and what that connection is that when we met with Rock the Future, they invited us to a greater alliance, to look at the community partnerships as a greater whole. I have to tell you, it was really exciting to be amongst, community game changers. And like the conversation that we're having tonight, is that this is such a big issue that if we don't all start to divide and conquer a piece of it, we won't see that movement. And these are our families, these are our students, so we cannot shy away from the work. But really, Rock the Future was this great gateway that welcomed us in and said, okay, you're at the table, and we're going to begin to tackle some of these issues together. I believe this is going to be a long-standing partnership. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice President LeBron. Before I present my question, I do want to make sure I'm cognizant of the parent representative. Monica, I believe you're still on, and if so, do you have a question or statement you'd like to make regarding the attendance presentation?
Yes, thank you so much. So great presentation, thank you. I do have a question though, in regards to this particular slide and this information. I would like to know how you have engaged the actual parent groups in the district, so PLAC, MPAC, and BEC around informing them of the importance of attendance. I know half days are hard. I'm not gonna lie. I know some parents just say stay home. So that's my one question. And then a comment or a suggestion. What I think would be great for your back to school attendance awareness event is possibly having some sort of workshop around our new course catalog at RCSD and also the requirements of graduation because I'm looking at those ninth grade numbers. And I think if parents know and students know what is required to graduate and they know what their school offers, it may help them plan a little better because ninth grade is tough for families and students. So that's just my suggestion. And then if you could just answer my one question.
Yep,
Thanks
thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Great presentation.
Thank you, appreciate it. Just for clarification, so you were asking around kind of how we engage with the specific parent groups. I did mention that we do partner very closely with Director Holloman, who's over Office of Parent Engagement. We were present during the Parent University events, and so basically every event that she holds, that we do have a stake in that, and we did honor the parents with great attendance during those events. But to your greater point, this is an area where I think that we can improve. President Elliott really mentioned, bringing parents on as a thought partner. This is an area where we can continue to grow. I think this department has seen really substantial growth is that we built a strong foundation with our CSD, and now what we need to make sure that we do is communicate all of that back to our families, but also we need to hear from them as to how our interventions are taking place, if they truly are effective, what we can do better. So I really do appreciate what you're saying, just in light of also a digital platform. So we had mentioned that we created an opportunity for staff to be able to communicate about attendance, and that's something that we can grow with families. And we are under that family and community engagement umbrella, so we can kind of lean in and do all of that together.
So I'll add to
Thank
that
you.
also. I'll add to that also. So we meet with all the parent group leaders each month, usually the first Monday of each month. And part of the reason for that is that we have a lot of work to do as a district in rebuilding our parents' trust and really giving opportunities for our parents to be true partners with us. So it is at that time that we are wrestling with a lot of challenges and really responding, right, to what they put on the table for us. So one of the things that came out of that is an event that we're planning next month, which is to allow parents, families to come together and really think about what are those academic milestones as their scholars transition from one grade to another, whether it's kindergarten, whether it's middle school, whether it's high school, and also to look around what we can do as a community and as parents to ensure that minimum summer learning loss, and also discuss attendance and the importance of attendance. So each month, we're meeting with them as representatives and oftentimes are also attending some of the PLAC meetings through Zoom, depending on what topic the parents would like us to come and discuss. But that is certainly something that we're well aware of and recognize that with time and being responsive on our end and keeping our word, that relationship will begin to strengthen. But we are certainly listening to their input and working as closely together and really beginning that healing process, I would say, the district to our parents. So that is going on monthly and is a commitment that we made to sit together and discuss whatever is important to the parents and really begin to plan a plan on how we're going to address those and not just admire and talk about what some of those concerns are.
Thank you. And Monica, come through with the parent voice, okay? Thank you. I appreciate that question. Parents know what their children need. And I love the fact that the openness to broaden the partnership is there. So I'm going to just recognize a couple of things. I love that you lifted the parent liaisons and the homeschool assistants. I called them the plug when I last saw them, because that's truly what they are. They are the plug. They keep us plugged in. They know the day-to-day. They are doing what they need to do. They know what the voice is and what the needs are. And so we cannot lift that. I want to applaud your team here this evening. Like literally applaud them. That's okay, because we're going to go ahead and do that, because to Vice President LeBron's point, it is not an easy work. It is a grueling work, and it is an unapologetic work, and you don't necessarily get a pat on the back after you've made progress. So we appreciate you this evening. And to Commissioner Patterson's point, Rochester is well known to be resource rich, and I think you said that. But the other part of that is results poor, unfortunately. And so when you lifted slide 17 around trying to break down the silos internally in this system as it stands, that is part of the pivotal point that we need to remain at, not just with your team, but across the board. And if we can really, truly break down those silos and begin to interact with each other in various departments to the greater cause, we can start to see movement in this district. And the evidence was in this presentation this evening. And again, incremental improvement, but yet improvement. So thank you for what you're doing there. I look forward to hearing more about how these efforts are moving forward.
Thank
you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sim, I need to
I'm gonna
make a
give it to you,
correction.
President. Go- yes,
please.
ma'am.
Because I will argue on this every time. The point that you made about the city being program rich and outcomes poor, that's not true. What it is that we get the outcomes based on the funding that we get. So you could be limited on funding, and where we perhaps need to address certain situations, you can't do it because you have the funding. Many of these organizations are meeting the goals based on the funding that they receive. If they had more funding, they can, we can have more outcomes. But the fact is that most organizations who are in this business of nonprofit are meeting the goals and the outcomes that they're meeting, but it's limited based on the funding that we see. So I remember the former mayor saying that. And when IBM was in town and they came over to Baden Street making that comment, and I had to straighten them out because that's not the case. So I want to just make sure that the public knows that we are doing, these organizations are doing what they have been funded to do. The funding has been limited.
Yeah, and I've
Thank
worked
you.
in these organizations for a number of years, and so I'm not remiss of the efforts that go in, and we recognize funding is often an issue.
Yeah.
But when we look at the impact, as statements were made, we still have people that are homeless. That's a result. We still have children that are not reading. That's a result. And so therefore, I'm going to stick with mine, but I respect your position. And
Yeah.
I'm going to move over to
There
Commissioner
always
Malloy at this
be-
point.
But there, and one of the things I remember saying to Morelli is that you have to have a system in place in which you can move people through poverty.
Yes.
But you're gonna always have the poor. Jesus
Right.
taught us that. But you don't have to have the same poverty, and so you could move through. We haven't done a very good job of putting the structure in place in this.
Yeah, I think our
Thank you.
systems have something to be desired. We got $1 billion here in this district, though, so let's put them results on the table. That's what I say. Now, Commissioner Malloy, I'm going to go ahead and give that to you.
Thank you. Thank you. First and foremost, thank you so much, Director Jelsma. I hope I'm saying your last name right.
You are.
Thank you so much to you and your team for the work that you are clearly doing and the strategies that you're implementing to ensure the success of our students. So thank you. Thank you to your team. Thank you for being here for so long this evening. You know, kids can't learn if they're not at school. We're not going to see readers if they're not getting that daily instruction. I really, not to be redundant, because a lot of this has already been said, but there were certain things in your presentation that just really resonated with me. First of all, in slide 4, when you discuss strategies addressing mental health and the social emotional needs of our students, thank you for highlighting that. And to go along with that, when you talked about breaking down internal silos, the fact that we're seeing different departments working together on these common issues and not just operating in those silos anymore, I think we're going to see more success because of that. And I really loved in the presentation the discussion about meeting the needs and addressing barriers of our very diverse populations within the district. Making data more accessible to our families, and then our use of that data to help us drive strategies in the district. I loved that you uplifted the student voice piece and parent voice. I'd love to see that highlighted. And also the district level support of the homeschool assistants and the parent liaisons and the work that we seem to be doing across those different departments. You know, their work is critical, and anything that we can do to support their work is going to help us seamlessly improve our attendance rates. So thank you so much for everything that you and your department do, and I am looking forward to see a continuation of that upward trajectory. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Malloy. And last but certainly not least, we'll ask for questions or comments from Commissioner Griffin at this time.
Thank you. I'm not going to try to say your name because I might crucify it, but I respect your presentation. Just a couple of comments and then a question. When we talk about the lack of attendance or low attendance in the schools, I just have to reflect on when I went to school and when I was in 7th, 8th grade, going on to 9th grade. I had a lot of CTE programs that were in my school when I went to Thomas Jefferson, and I think that one way that we can increase our attendance and keep it steady, if we have the CTE programs that we had back when I was in school in the early 80s, and also if we had the sports that were available in our schools, I think that we have removed a lot of those things, and I think that that has an effect, a direct impact on our students' attendance, because I myself used to want to run to photography class and wood class, things of this nature. So we have to make sure that we put those things back in the schools, because we have the money. We have to put them back in. I don't know why they ever went away, but we need to fix that so that we can keep our attendance at a steady rate and improve our enrollment. And also, my question, not even a question, but I think too, that when I went to school early, and a lot of buses was running when it was dark outside. So, and a lot of parents sent their kids off to school. I think the time change in schools is a big problem, because we have parents that go to school at certain times, which affects how their kids are getting to school. We have to wait for transportation, and some parents are late to work. Some parents are affected by the time changes with our school hours too. So that may be instrumental in the lack of attendance. Not not at the fault of you, but at the fault of who's making these changes on the clock for the times that these doors open for the schools. So those are some things that maybe we need to look at as well as a board and as a district, because I think those can have an impact on your numbers. And I think that's a strong thing there. But that may maybe be our issue. Now, for the question, I know that you have touched around a lot of things with the enrollment, with the attendance. And my concern primarily is when we addressed our attendance with the different schools and you check a person absent and they're absent over a certain amount of days, and how we are being proactive in addressing that. And to further explain what I want to say in reference to that is, do we know where those children are? And why is it that there's outside sources or other restorative practices that these kids are going to, and we don't know that they're at those restorative practice, and then we find out that student actually is getting help, but we're marking him or her absent on the attendance, and we don't know where they are. So what steps are we taking or to make sure that we're not missing something there? Because we may not be governing or knowing all of the agencies or partnering with those agencies that are actually doing restorative work with these children that we keep marking absent, right? So I think that there's a twofold there. We need to make sure we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's with all the organizations that are also giving restorative practices to our children that are not going to school, but we are just marking them absent and not knowing where they are. So what are we doing under that? What are we doing in those steps to make that more transparent, making sure that we're not missing something there as far as restorative practices with other agencies that are not working with our CSD?
So I can answer that. So no one organizes a restorative practice intervention outside the school except at the hub. And the only way it happens at the hub is that they must come with a school representative, and they're often suspended. 9 out of 10 times, those students on a long-term suspension, and that intervention tries to take place prior to them coming. If they do not, there's a referral process. It's initiated at the school, and the partners are at the hub along with the RCSD staff in order to provide that intervention.
Okay, I have to disagree with you because this is clearly something that I know that has happened.
Okay.
And I want to. That's why I'm addressing it with her, because obviously there is programs out there that we may not be cognizant of. No fault to our own. That maybe we need to further address it outside of this. But actually, this is why I'm asking the question. This is not something I'm just drumming up.
Yeah.
This is something that has actually happened.
So, Commissioner Griffin?
we definitely need to make sure that we're addressing people that we know where the children are. That's my main point.
Commissioner
We need to know
Griffin?
where they are.
No, I think
Commissioner-
that's a good point.
Yeah, no,
So the
And
board
every
chair is gonna,
legitimate- Every
board
legitimate
chair right
community
here,
partner.
board chair right here.
But we're just
One mic,
discussing-
it's okay.
chair.
It's okay.
Respect the chair.
Hold on, personality.
No, board chair.
Board chair.
I am, how should I state this? Claiming my time? I'm reclaiming my time.
But I think they're making it more than what it is.
No, it's okay. I'm gonna take the mic at this time, and we're going to conclude conversation. And I do respect what you're saying, and I do think that any additional follow-up, because I think it can be some more clarity and conversation beyond this in the question log. I wanted to, thank you for giving me the mic, take a moment to make sure I understood you, because your question, which was that there are community resources maybe out there where children are going there, not necessarily coming to
Right.
school, and
Right.
we may not be aware of that.
That's right.
And so I understand that, and maybe there are some opportunities to partner with them, and we can put that in the log, but my first of mine would be I wouldn't know. So we can put that in the log, because I don't think that's a question will be able to answer this evening.
But also, if you know of any programs that our students
Right.
are going to, that you're saying that is not a part what the deputy superintendent is saying, then you need to provide that information yourself.
And that's clearly what I was saying, but I wasn't able to finish that statement because I'm saying maybe we should find that out.
But
so
do
that
you
we
know of any?
And I did say that. I did in the midst of the
Because,
talking
in-
with each
in a-
other.
in
I
the-
was
yeah.
answering her saying that, no, this is clearly some, a program that's out there. And maybe we need to get more
Yeah, 'cause in
information
a
so that we
day-to-day,
can help. You know, if
yeah.
they want to help, that's fine. But maybe we need to know who they are so that if the
But
kids
do
are
you
going,
know-
I just said that.
Board question log, for the sake
No,
of this
I guess I
conference.
need to be, I was trying to be clear about it too.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out, trying to
I've got it.
interpret what she was
For
saying.
the sake of this
Yeah.
conversation, Clerk Nguyen, if you don't mind presenting to the board question log that, to President Elliott, I got it right here, is that if we can identify potential programming in the area that students may be utilizing for social emotional supports or what have you during the school day, that maybe they're going to and we're not aware of, and maybe we can identify some of those
And they're not
programs.
suspended. You know, they're just not attending the school.
Right, so that's not, that's like,
That's a whole
that's not
different
something we're gonna
animal.
find,
But they're enrolled.
right? That's like me waking up, I'm just gonna give this analogy and then we're gonna conclude and let the question log handle it. The analogy that I think of is me waking up, if I'm a parent, I'll use my child. If I wake up and I send my child to Timbuktu, up the street to Auntie, down the street to Boys and Girls Club, whatever the case is, and he does not show up to school, the school is only going to mark him absent. It is, so there's a communication, and so that's where the parents come in. So we'll look and see about these resources, and to President Elliott's point, if there are some partnerships or resources that you
That's
think
what I
that's
said.
happening,
That's what me and-
go
that's
ahead
what
and give
Deputy
those.
Turner was talking about before. It just went kind of this way.
So I
and was just
appreciate it.
addressing
What I'm going to ask you all to do at this particular time is finish this board survey. I'm going to end the meeting at this time, and then commit any questions to the board question log. And thank you so much. This was a robust ESA meeting. Thank you, guys.
Motion,
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, yes, entertain a motion to.
motion.
Okay. Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Good evening. I am Cynthia Elliott, President of the Rochester Board of Education. We are convening a special meeting for the consideration of resolutions. We have no speakers for this evening's meeting, but we will now go to the resolutions. I'm going to ask for a motion for resolutions, if it's okay that I can bundle them all. Is that okay? All right. And so, is there a motion for resolutions? 777 through 791, moved by Commissioner Simmons, seconded by Commissioner Santiago. Any questions or comments related to resolutions 777 through 791? Deputy
Yes.
Superintendent?
Yes, President Elliott, the administration actually needs to bring forth a change to an amendment number 781, in which we add employee Michael Latragna to that resolution, and we would like to pull resolution number 783.
So
further
781
revisions.
as amended.
Yes, ma'am.
Does another, we need another motion for that, General Counsel?
Yes, you have to, a motion to amend it to add what the deputy superintendent.
All right, so can I get a motion to amend
Second.
what the Deputy Superintendent said with regard to including? Yeah, 781. Can you repeat that?
And add Michael Latragna to the resolution.
All right, so second, motion by who?
Camille, second.
Moved by Commissioner Simmons, seconded by Commissioner Malloy. Any questions or comments related to Resolution 781 as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And so we're also, Commissioner Patterson?
A question relative to 785.
All right, can you hold that for a minute? Let me finish
Sure.
with Deputy Superintendent. And so Deputy Superintendent, we're going to pull 783, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so we're pulling that. Is there a motion that needs to, anything needs to be done with that, General Counsel?
So now you can rephrase the bundle minus 783.
Three,
which
okay.
was just pulled, yep.
Yes, okay, all right, all right. Commissioner Patterson, you had a question?
Yeah, 785, it says, I won't mention any names, I guess. Director of Staff Relations, Office of Human Capital. Could someone explain that to me, what that is?
Sure. We have 3 directors of staff relations that are linked with the school chiefs and our networks of schools, and the directors of staff relations support each of those networks and the various needs of principals relative to staff concerns, discipline, counseling, other issues that are needed to support needs at schools. This is not a current employee, if you're curious about that. It's
not?
someone else.
Oh, it threw me. So this is a new position?
No,
Or you're filling it?
someone resigned their position, so we're filling
okay.
the position.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you very much for that clarification.
Yeah, because I know Shep wouldn't take that amount of money. I already know. You say bye. I do have questions regarding 777, 778, and 779. We're being asked to suspend or waive the travel policy. Is that what we're being asked to do for 777 through 779?
Yes, that is correct, President Elliott. These 3 schools are embarking on an adventure through an expeditionary learning in which they will be traveling to Canada. If you recall, I think late last year, we actually had a change in policy around expectations in terms of international travel, in which we said, I believe, up to 6 months in advance or whatnot, just to make sure legal had everything right and our students are protected on the travel. But however, we've been able to make sure all of the elements of this trip is protected so that our students can go to Ontario, Canada to partake in this activity.
So does the policy read that, how does the policy read? Because are we going against our own policy, or did we just, the 120 days allow us what? The 120 days, we're being asked to suspend the policy, and I guess I need to clarify.
So the policy is policy 4400. And the policy says any request for trips to foreign countries must be approved by the billing principal, submitted to appropriate chief 180 calendar days before the trip. Upon approval by the school chief, the request shall be submitted to the superintendent, and upon their approval to the Board of Education for final approval at least 120 calendar days before the trip. So I think embedded in the resolution, and I took a quick glance at just one of them, it says that the board is waiving any element that is adverse to the adverse to the policy. And which it would be the 120 days time period, because obviously this is not 120 days before the trip is occurring.
So should the policy be amended?
The board can always amend the policy, but not
No,
tonight.
I'm not talking
The
about it
policy
this
is-
time, but I'm just, because this just seemed to be not aligned, so to speak, for whatever reason, that we're asking to suspend the policy. I understand that we got it done in advance, but is it an exception to these schools that they got all of their documentation in order?
I think, President, I don't want to presume for the individual principals or school chiefs, but I think it was just a lack of awareness that this was a requirement. And once folks were alerted, hey, this is a requirement pursuant to the board policy, they routed these to the board for approval. So it was just I believe, an unintentional awareness that it was required to be submitted for the board. And once people were alerted that they needed to, these were routed to the board for approval.
All right, Dr. Peluso, you have some comments?
Good evening. Yes, I think Council Neal just kind of told it. In some of these situations prior, these weren't going to the board for approval. The policy does state 120 days notification by the board. We didn't get the 120 days notification in this case, but it is our intent to bring forth out of country travel to this board 120 days prior. So I wouldn't change the policy. It is the intent, but in this case, because of the newness of going back out of the country,
That's true.
the 120 days was not met in this situation.
Okay, understood it now. And then I think that I do have a question about 781, but let me just, I don't know what the amendment's going to be, but my question has to do with what goes on into registering for summer learning. Just need to want to understand that process.
So what the registrars are doing is, after they receive a list of students who need to retake courses and such over the summer, they actually partake in in actual scheduling and building of coursework for the summertime program. But they're doing this in addition to what they are doing for next school year. So it's like things are happening simultaneously. They're building schedules for next school year, as well as adding students to appropriate schools and whatnot. And then this resolution is for them to do additional work for adding, for building course master schedules for the summertime.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions, Commissioner Santiago?
Yeah, I do have a question for Resolution 783.
That's being pulled, isn't it?
We're pulling that, right? Okay, then never mind, I'm sorry.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, I just want to remind commissioners that 781 is an amended resolution, right? And so. 783 is being pulled. And 783 is being pulled. So is there are all in favor for Resolution 777 through 791, pulling 783 and amending 781?
91?
No, the motion is open.
No, yeah, no. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. And then the next order of business is the superintendent's goals. Yeah, is the superintendent's goals up for discussion? And I'm going to State Monitor Alicia, if I can ask you to begin to weigh in on this, because some of the questions that we had, do we need to review this with the superintendent, being that he's going to be leaving? So what's your thoughts on that? And is it possible to modify it, or? So I'll have you to start.
And I will have a conversation with the state regarding this. This was part of one of the recommendations from the academic plan. It's one of the requirements for the superintendent's evaluation that needed to begin at the beginning of the school year. But because he was waiting for the strategic plan to be done, for the board goals to be done, so they could all be in alignment, now he submitted the goals. So I will get some feedback from the state regarding the evaluation, because he will be leaving at the end of the school year.
Questions or comments related to the goals at this point?
I just have a quick question.
Superintendent Santiago. Commissioner Santiago?
I just was wondering, you know, because we do have like our board goals and some of our other goals that the board has organized, and also, you know, like the strategic plan and things like that. So my question is, would it be a good idea to have one of these goals already in place to show our expectations? Or is that not, and I guess this would be to the state monitor, or should we, you know, just wait on that until we have our next superintendent in place?
Again, it's one of those duties of the board to do the evaluation of the superintendent. And it is supposed to be done twice a year, one for the middle of the school year and one at the end of the school year, to give feedback regarding the performance. As I said, it was part of the academic plan, and I will get feedback and we'll get back to the board and the superintendent.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you know, if you know, we already have some goals in place that we're expecting the next superintendent or the interim superintendent to fulfill. And so I was wondering if that was a good idea, but it sounds like you're still getting some more information on that.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that later.
I mean, the board goals were approved at the end of January, and then he was waiting to be aligned with the strategic plan that was approved in March, so I will get that information.
All right, Dr. Peluso?
To answer Commissioner Santiago's question, I think the guidance for the next superintendent, interim, or whomever permanent is the strategic plan that outlines where a lot of this is captured. So none of this is really new. They're just more of some of the goals pulled out from the strategic plan to be the superintendent's overall goals. But the strategic plan will be the North Star for whoever is in the seat.
It's a good question.
All right, well, that concludes our agenda, but we need to go into executive session. So may I have a motion to go into executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment or employment of a particular person, to discuss matters made confidential pursuant to federal or state law, and to receive the advice of the general counsel as permitted by Section 105 of the Open Meetings Law. So I think Commissioner Simmons moved it, and Commissioner Griffin, I'll give you the second. All those in favor? Aye. All right. So good night. We will adjourn from downstairs. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Good night.